We've arrived at the beginning of training camp. 2025 summer camp is underway out in Ashburn, and no Terry McLaurin. He is officially a training camp holdout. Good morning, everybody. Ben's going to join me at noon. We may have another guest or two, still trying to work that through. Dan Quinn spoke before the team's first on-field work began. That happened a little while ago. He said about adjusting to working without Terry, quote, "It's part of the business of the NFL. I don't judge it or get too worked up about it. I know Adam and his team, they're working as hard as they can with Terry. This happens on teams all over. So the longer you've been in it, the more you recognize that's just how things go. We think the world of him. It's why we're trying to do the extension. We hold him in really high regard." So let's get to it. 90 players are on a summer training camp NFL roster. Washington's got 88 in, 89 in. Terry is on the reserve, what they call the reserve did not report list. Sam Cosmi, by the way, today put on the active, physically unable to perform list. Remember, Sam had the ACL torn in the win over Detroit back in January. Typically, if you do the math on this, Sam Cosmi's back probably by the end of September or some in early October. So I am very surprised that Terry decided not to report. I thought a hold-in was much more likely than a holdout. It's going to cost him $50,000 a day. All right, so this is day 2, so he's up to $100,000. And you know, the last collective bargaining agreement between the players and the owners made it impossible for the owners to do what they used to do with holdouts, which is to just waive the fines. The league and its players wanted more strict consequences for holding out from training camp because it could be disruptive to teams and teams' rosters and create, distractions. They wanted their players there. It also, as Paulie from the 757 has pointed out several times, it also perhaps increases the likelihood of a, soft tissue injury, if you're not there right from the beginning. I don't know if there's any data on that, but that's Paulie's contention. But they don't let teams waive those fines anymore. When you hold out, you're getting fined and you're paying those fines. He already was fined back in June for missing mandatory minicamp, roughly $104,000. Obviously, this is a lot pricier on a per-day miss than mandatory minicamp. So we'll see what happens. And I don't know if there are loopholes. I don't know if there are ways around it. I would imagine that, if they were to get a long-term contract extension done, let's just say the ultimate, number in fines is $300,000. They could add another $300,000 to the contract to make up for it. Maybe. I don't know. But I really thought he was going to come in and do the hold-in thing where, more times than not, that results in not being fined, even if you're not practicing. You're in the facility, you're there, you're taking part in everything but the on-field work. So I thought that was a better bet. I was wrong. He is holding out. This is now officially, a standoff. Because the talk, whether it's Terry directly or the agent leaking stuff to media members, that doesn't necessarily create a standoff environment. Even missing mandatory minicamp in June isn't, a standoff situation. But when you get to the first day of training camp, you are officially a holdout. And let's face it, officially as a holdout, that creates now, almost by definition, a true contractual standoff. And for Terry, man, it does not fit the personality. For him not to be there with his teammates, for him not to be there preparing for the season, for him not to be, right there at the beginning of this 2025 season. By the way, the most anticipated season in 25 years, at least for this franchise, it really means that things right now in the moment must be pretty awful between the two sides. It's not, unfixable. Of course, these things always get this way. We saw it, in San Francisco last summer with Brandon Ayuk. He ended up holding in to avoid the fines. But the combination of Terry last week for 35 minutes validating his worth, talking about how he doesn't feel valued, we had that combination of frustration, anger, and legitimate hurt, more than anything else. You combine that, which we saw, a week ago? I think it was a week ago today, with him not showing for the first day of camp, it just means things aren't good right now. I'm not off of my position, which is I expect a deal to get done at some point and for both sides to tell the world, we love each other. It's just business. But I thought there was a really good chance, during this offseason that the deal would be done by now and that Terry wouldn't be a holdout. It's just not him. We know how team first he is. So for it to have come to this, it's not a great sign. Now, it could be a very short-term thing. It could be just to make a point. I don't know. We'll see. He's not there today for the first day of on-field work. I don't have a major problem with what Terry is doing. I think right now there are two sides, his side, their side, and the truth probably lies somewhere in between, which is typical in life. But he feels undervalued. He feels like he's being treated unfairly. And given his track record, and you should always, consider track record when it comes to the character of somebody. I might not be as lenient as a fan on someone else who's under contract. Let's not forget, Terry is under contract. Other players, other situations, I might not be as lenient, as understanding, but Terry's, a unique guy. And we have this history with him for his entire career where he really slogged through some brutal years in what was the most embarrassing front office organization in sports. And yet somehow he was still viewed by the league, by his teammates, by fans as classy in an organization that was essentially the Griswolds. So for him to do this, I feel, empathy for his situation, and I respect it. But with that said, I also continue to lean in the direction of believing in Adam Peters and the front office, and that they are doing what's in the best interest of the organization. They've built up a lot of equity in just, 16, 17 months, whatever it's been since they've been here. Would be January of 2024. So we're talking about, about 18 months since they got here. They've built up a lot of goodwill. And I was going to give them the benefit of the doubt anyway, until they got their, until they got some traction. So I think there are smart people in the front office. I think there are people who are also empathetic. I think that's a big part of leadership. In addition to competence and shrewd and savviness, there's a level of empathy with the best of leaders. I think they understand how important Terry is. I think they understand the dynamic of treating him fairly, because they could look badly if they don't. But I trust in what they're doing. I do. And at the same time, I know it's kind of fence straddling, but I understand Terry's position, and I don't hold a grudge, or I don't have a gripe with it. But I believe that the team, more likely than not, is doing the right thing. We just don't know, other than the Jeremy Fowler reporting from over the weekend, that Washington is not near $30 million. and he might be much lower than that. And Terry's asking for more than that in terms of an average annual. We don't really know for sure whether or not the team lowballed him, or at least with respect to the market. But this is a very subjective thing. Terry's contract was always going to be a little bit dicey because of the trickiness of the age and where is he really, on the list of great receivers. And then at the same time, but what a great dude. He's phenomenal from an intangible standpoint. So it was always going to be a bit tricky. So even if we find out that the team's initial offer was 25 or 26 million a year, something like that, 24 million a year, I'd be hesitant to refer to it as a low ball offer, because I think there's a lot in play here. Although that would seem pretty low ball. But certainly somewhere in the neighborhood of 28, I would not consider to be a low ball offer, especially if that was a first offer. But they seem to be far apart for now. Sometimes in these situations, both sides can be right. Both sides can make very strong cases for their respective positions, even if their respective positions are far apart. It happens in business and in life and in sports. So we'll see what happens. But it is strange, isn't it, that Terry McLaurin is actually taking it to the point where under contract he is holding out. I played out in my mind just the worst case, which we've talked about before. The worst case being they don't get a contract extension done and he plays in 2025 on his current contract, which has a year left. The team has flexibility. Remember, other than not wanting to look bad because of, not getting a deal done with Terry in the eyes of fans, personally, I'm going to trust them. I am. But they have some leverage, and it's called the franchise tag. He's got a year left on his deal, and if he balls out and he plays great and the team does well again and they want him back and they can't get an extension done next offseason, they can use the franchise tag on Terry. And that's a pay-as-you-go situation. Keep in mind, they're not paying him really anything other than base salary in the last year of his deal once the season starts. And then if they were to franchise tag him, that's a base salary number. You pay as you go. You're not doling out 75 million or 70 million in guaranteed money. A lot of it, upon signing, and a lot of it into escrow. So I don't know how much of that is playing into this, but we'll see. But I played out in my mind like the worst case. Like, let's just say they both decide we are just way too far apart. We're not getting a deal done. So what do you want to do, Terry? What does he do? Well, he can't hold out for the entire camp and just show up for the regular season, can he? He's got to play once the regular season begins. He's got to collect that paycheck, and he's got to have his contract grow. If he doesn't, play, there's still a year left on his contract when he comes back next offseason. And he's in the same boat, but a year older and having not played in 2 years. So that's not happening. I think the absolute worst case is they continue to try to work things out as he's holding out. And in a week or two, they just are like, we're just way too far apart. What do you want to do? This is our last and final. We're not budging off of this. It's, the ball is in your court. At that point, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, does he come in? Does he wait until camp's over? I don't know. It's going to be, we've got a new thing this time of year to sort of pay attention to and observe from afar. This isn't usually the conversation. And even if it is the conversation, it's not as meaningful because the team isn't going to be very good, when we've had these conversations in the past. This year, the stakes are higher because they are, the third or fourth choice to win the NFC Championship, the seventh or eighth choice to win the Super Bowl. They're coming off their most successful season in 33 years. and they are loaded, and they are going to be highly profiled in prime time many times this year. Yeah, I think the worst case is he misses a lot of camp. They don't get a deal done. He comes in very late. He ends up playing. And, there are people out there. Paulie's one of them. And I think it's not an unfair thing to say. It puts him at risk that he's not been out there working and growing with the team. He's missing out on the work. And perhaps physically, he's missing out on what he needs to be at 100% when the season begins. Interesting stuff. So there were some things yesterday that Dan Quinn and Adam Peters said that in the wake of that press conference, which we played here live, we talked about some of it, but there were a couple of things that we didn't spend time on, including, I think, a big reveal. And I'm going to share that with you when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. So yesterday on Grant and Danny on 106.7 The Fan, our sister station, Phil Mendelson, the council chair, was a guest on the show. Clearly in the wake of the Trump tweets the other day, lots of conversation about the name. I had Eric Flack from WUSA Channel 9 on my podcast on Monday, and he actually asked the mayor about the name. Like, would it be an impediment to bringing the team back to DC as it once was? And she said no, it wouldn't be. So what about the city council? Well, Phil Mendelson was asked about this by Grant and Danny. I think Grant, you'll hear, ask the initial question. Here's what Phil Mendelson said about if the team did change back to Redskins.
The president wants the team to change its name. I know you're saying this is a distraction, and I totally get that. In a hypothetical, would them being named the Redskins in any way change anything for the city council's willingness to build them a stadium?
I haven't talked to other members, but my guess is no. It wouldn't change it for me, but I don't even know why we're talking about that, other than that the president did those tweets.
Well, that's kind of why.
I would say that's the reason.
That would be the reason. So, but you understand my question. You'll have to educate me a little bit, because I didn't have to follow this like it was a 400 level class before, not being on the radio back then. But there was a time where the belief was the team could never have a stadium in DC again as the Redskins, that the name would need to change. And my point is, if the name is forced to change back, are we still at a point where the powers that be would say, we're not going to support a team named the Redskins? It sounds like you're saying
I think what's missing from what you just said is that the ownership was also very unpopular.
So it was never the name that was preventative of going back to DC. It was Dan Snyder.
I would say it was probably the two together.
But if one's gone, then it was.
Folks are excited about the team, and they had a great season last year. That's changed a lot of attitudes.
He's just compelling radio, isn't he? The guys were trying, and they got some good stuff out of him, that's for sure. You know, I thought it was interesting, and that's why I wanted to play it, that last part, is that, you know, he brought up that it was as much about Dan Snyder as it was about the name. Now, if we go back in time, it was a lot about the name too. But therein lies the, problem that, the team and its fan base had, is that Snyder's arrogance, his, incompetence, his inability to finesse anything just inspired more dislike, inspired the, anti-namers to be even more active, instead of trying to come up with a strategic solution, as, Florida State and other, Indian monikered team nicknames have done over the years. But again, I'm not going to get into, we've done it so many times, the difference between Redskins and Braves, or Redskins and Chiefs, or Redskins and Seminoles. I know what the difference is. Redskins is dictionary defined insensitive. Understood. We're just in disagreement, many of us, with those that leaned on that as the mic drop, as to whether or not that definition was accurate. Anyway, interesting, right? That it was, from his standpoint today, as much about Snyder as it was about the name. But he said the name, and it's not changing back to the Redskins. I hope I'm wrong. Like I've been saying, I hope I'm wrong. I can't wait for the day to be wrong about that one. But if it ever did, it wouldn't be an impediment to the team returning to DC, like apparently it once was. And the mayor also answered the question the same way the other day with Eric Flack from Channel 9. All right. I wanted to play some sound from yesterday's Peters Quinn press conference, because we had focused, I think, a lot on the things that were said about Terry McLaurin, because it was the first day of camp. Would he or wouldn't he in terms of reporting? He didn't. Where was the state of negotiations? All of that stuff related to Terry. And I've got another, soundbite that I will play about Terry. But I wanted to start with what I thought was an interesting thing to just consider as fans of the team heading into 2025 for right now. Because I've said many times, including yesterday, this is the time of the year you got to be careful. You can't make big declarations or proclamations. You're going to see video coming out of Ashburn. We're going to watch preseason games. And we've all learned over the years that this time of year is such a head fake. It's such fool's gold. The Marcus Masons and the Marco Mitchells. And we could create a list that's 5 pages long. Of the things that we've all said that we thought we were seeing that absolutely meant nothing once the real games began. But to me, injury information, contract negotiation information, that's all real stuff this time of year. And I love listening to coaches, head coach, coordinators, position coaches, players, when they have these media avails. Like Dan Quinn's going to talk basically every day. Unless they have a day off. Quinn spoke this morning. And, once it took us a while to kind of learn Quinn's style and to sort of decipher, is he telling us something by not saying anything? Or, I think Quinn likes to talk. And I think you can, even when he's not being direct and he's trying to be evasive, you can sometimes take something out of an answer from Dan Quinn and project it. Last summer, I remember specifically going into training camp last year, almost everybody agreed that the biggest weakness or perceived weakness on the team was its offensive line. Like, God, man, they just had to build up the line for Jaden in his rookie year. The offensive line was perceived to be super weak and the Achilles heel of the team, the offense and the team. And Quinn said, in a presser midway through camp, maybe as we approach the regular season, he said sometimes the perceptions from the outside about a position group being, the weak link, sometimes those perceptions are wrong. And to me, I remember saying in that moment, look, there's a consensus on what the perceived weakness of this team is. It's the offensive line. He is telling you that they are much more optimistic about the offensive line than the people on the outside of the building. And as it turned out, the offensive line was decent. It was much better than what we thought it would be heading into the year. Yeah, there were moments, especially when Tyler Biotish was out in that New Orleans game. But yeah, so I think going through the next 5-6 weeks before we get to real games. And even then, early in the season, the real games aren't very telling. We know about the NFL season, especially early in the season. Fool's gold, head fake, however you want to describe it, especially week 1 more than anything. Look at our team last year, week 1 versus the kind of team it ended up being. But I thought he said something yesterday in his very first press conference in training camp. There were 2 questions and 2 answers in which he specifically singled out one player on 2 to 3 different occasions. So the first soundbite in which he identifies and singles out a player, it's actually a group of players that he singles out. He's asked about, you'll hear the question, but he's essentially asked about, the growth of young players from year 1 to year 2. Here's what he said.
Before about second-year players in the NFL, just general second-year players taking that biggest leap this season. How early can you kind of hope to really see signs of that expansion of their talents?
Yeah, we had about, 10 rookies or so that were on the roster, maybe the 53, either at some point or most of the time last season. And that's pretty traditional that you see this jump happen from like year 1 to year 2. So this spring, man, did we see it in Sinnott, and we saw it in Newton and Jordan McGee and others. One I think that's unusual, and they'll get better, but Jaden and Mikey, they kind of corrected it in season. They didn't have to wait till the off season. I think that speaks a little bit to their rarity. Like, it's normal to fight your ass off in the season and take your lumps, and then in the off season, I got to get better at this. I got to work on this. those two, with the experience they had, they kind of self-corrected faster. That didn't mean they didn't get better this spring, but we are really excited to see Javonte and Brandon and some of the others in this role that they're going into their second year. It's a big deal. And most of it, David, is confidence. You know, I've done this. I know what to do. I worked on this skill. And once you get to that space where you're not relying on just your talent anymore, but the skill that you've developed at the position, that's the secret sauce, man. If you can get those skills right, and it takes oftentimes into that second or third year to do that. So we're excited to see the work they put in take place out here on the field.
By the way, we kind of mocked a little bit last summer the consistent theme of we've got the secret sauce, or this is the secret sauce. They had some secret sauce last year. So benefit of the doubt on secret sauce talk heading into 2025. But the first part of that answer, when he says, you see this jump happen from year one to year two. And this spring, man, did we see it in Sinnott, as in Ben Sinnott. We saw it in Newton, as in Johnny Newton. We saw it in Jordan McGee and others. That's the part that I want you to just focus on here for a moment. First of all, Jordan McGee, we've heard for a while now, going back to last year, there was a lot of discussion about how they really kind of liked him. And we heard that, that also came from a lot of the press avails, where they were talking about Jordan McGee over and over again. And then, there were injuries and he never ended up sort of fulfilling what I think their plan was for him last year. This year could be different. But Ben Sinnott was mentioned as the first player here. Big jump. Man, did we see it in Sinnott in the spring. So now I want to take you to another question that was asked, a few minutes later. And this question was about, players getting more familiar with the system in kind of year two. Here's what Quinn said.
When you ask the question of, like, what did I see on the field, like on the offensive side, like Sinnott and Coleman, they jumped out to me in some different ways. Brandon moving inside the guard and like putting in the work to do that. Sinnott coming off of shoulder surgery. He rehabbed so hard where during that off-season part, he and Sam were two of the ones we saw every day still while they were getting themselves ready. And I saw that confidence come out onto the field.
So Sinnott in two different answers. By the way, am I the only one that missed this? I Googled it and couldn't find it. Did he tell us something that we didn't know prior to him saying it about Sinnott having off-season shoulder surgery? He got hurt in the Tampa playoff game. I remember that, and there's plenty of information on the internet about him getting hurt, his shoulder getting injured in the Tampa Bay playoff game. I couldn't find anything on Sinnott having off-season shoulder surgery. He mentions, Sinnott and Coleman in that particular soundbite. By the way, in the other soundbite, he also mentioned Brandon Coleman as well. But remember, Brandon Coleman's a player that we're familiar with. He played a lot last year. The draft that is most recent is sometimes the wrong draft to focus on. Oftentimes, it's the wrong draft to focus on. The better draft to focus on is the draft the year before, because most players do not blow up in year one like Jaden Daniels did. You typically don't get that in year one, or like Mikey Sanderstill did. Most players, it takes a year, sometimes 2 years. And when we've talked about, like, where are they going to get, better pass rush? Maybe it's John Baptiste. Maybe it's Jordan McGee. Maybe it's Johnny Newton. Maybe Newton becomes a massive run stopper. But I thought it was interesting that he singled out Sinnott multiple times. Ben Sinnott, 6'4", 250 pounds, second-round pick, number 53 overall. That was part of the trade back with Philadelphia, remember, where Washington gave up the opportunity to draft Cooper DeJean, which Philadelphia did, and they ended up with additional second-round picks. So they took Sanderstill and Sinnott with those two picks at 50 and 53. Sanderstill, really good player. Sinnott, we didn't see much from last year. caught a nice pass on a fake punt in the NFC Championship game, but that was about it. He was a player on draft night I remember being really excited about because he was a Cooley duplicate, like in style. Like he looks like Chris Cooley as a tight end. He is phenomenal after the catch, and he is a big target. So maybe, look, Zach Ertz is getting up there. We understand that. And we also, understand that John Bates is their blocking tight end. Well, Sinnett's next in line. I have a feeling we're going to see Sinnett have a big role, and sooner rather than later. This is just one of those things that I could come back and say, yeah, I was wrong. He was just, rambling and ripping off some names that were top of mind. But we've learned with Quinn in this 18 months with him that you can learn about what they are thinking by listening carefully to his answers. He typically doesn't just willy-nilly throw out names, especially 3 times in 2 different answers. By the way, if anybody can find a story that says that Sinnett had off-season shoulder surgery, send it to me because I could not find it. So I thought that was a bit revealing. All right, back to Terry. So I want to know from you at 301-230-0980 if you have a problem with him holding out. We did the, are you team Terry or team front office if it comes to this? Well, it's now come to this. He's holding out. So do you have a problem with Terry holding out? Yes or no? Why or why not? 301-230-0980. I thought that there was a really interesting question by David Aldridge. It's a long question, but I think it really encompasses what he wanted to get out of Adam Peters, and I thought he got a lot out of Adam Peters with his answer. Here's David Aldridge later in the presser yesterday coming back to Terry McLaurin.
For Adam, you have a lot of moving parts with Terry. You have history, you have future, you have philosophy. I wonder where all of those points meet for you and the organization in terms of trying to find a deal that's fair for the organization, but also fair to Terry and what he means to the team.
Yeah, that's always probably the tricky part of any negotiation is figuring all that out. And, in terms of understanding the market, understanding our team, understanding, our financial situation and all that. But, I don't think I've been a part of a negotiation where it's been really linear and smooth and everything like that. But I think, understanding where they're at and understanding where we're at and trying to close that gap and come into something is really the kind of all the nuance of it and staying really above board and negotiating in good faith. All those things come together and that's how you come to a deal. So as long as it fits in the construct of what you want to do and how you want to build it and what the player would Terry in this instance is comfortable with. So that's what we're working towards and we're having some good conversations and we'll continue to.
Yeah, this is there's so much nuance around this and so much of it, even sitting here talking about the nature of this contract negotiation, we just don't have enough information. There's a lot going on here, the understanding of the market. We think we can just pull up a chart, overthecap.com or spotrack.com and look at average annual and look at guaranteed and look at ages and have an idea. And maybe on that front, we're probably closer than on some of the other issues. Understanding our team, understanding our financial situation. I think that is multifold, but primarily I think he's talking about cap and future cap. In 2 years, they're going to have the largest expenditure on a player in NFL history. Fingers crossed that we get to that point, and that's the kind of contract that Jaden Daniels deserves in the offseason of 2027. So there will be a lot of planning around that move. He said, these contracts these negotiations aren't linear. He said, I've never been part of a negotiation where it's been really linear and smooth and everything like that. But I think understanding where they're at and understanding where we're at and trying to close that gap to come to something that's, worth it is the nuance of it. And then he talked about, and I think this is really where, the person that Terry is, has him, make this part of the answer. Not that they're not always trying to negotiate in good faith, but it's really important after last week where Terry essentially questioned their good faith and questioned, how they were valuing him. And he says, staying really above board and negotiating in good faith, all of those things come together, and that's how you make a deal. And, with Terry in this instance, he says, we want the player to be comfortable with it as well. All right. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. Where are you on Terry holding out? Are you okay with it? Are you angry with it? Your reaction to Terry McLaurin holding out on this. And maybe we do just simplify it like we did a few weeks ago in anticipation of this, although I didn't think we would get to this point. I thought he'd have a deal by the time we got to training camp. I was dead wrong. So let's make it even simpler. Are you team Terry or are you team front office on Terry's holdout and on this contract standoff? 301-230-0980. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980, theteam980.com. You can also watch us on the Team 980 YouTube page. Like it and subscribe to it when you get there. All right, let's keep it simple. We are officially in training camp contract standoff mode. Terry's holding out, did not post yesterday, did not post today. Officially, the team has put him on the reserve, did not report list. They also signed, by the way, a receiver today, Tay Martin, to take Terry's place on the roster for right now in camp. So with Terry holding out in this thing now officially in standoff mode, whose side are you taking? Whose side are you on? Are you on Team Terry, or are you siding with Team Front Office? As I said, earlier this hour, I can see situations where, both sides have legitimate arguments, even though they are far apart. Sometimes both sides can be right. Sometimes both sides can make compelling cases for their positions, and yet the positions are so far apart and they don't come to a deal, or at least not quickly enough. I have respect for Terry. I am empathetic towards his situation right now. With a lot of players who are still under contract with a year left, I'd be less less open-minded on this, and would be harsh towards the player in this situation. Not with Terry. With that said, I lean Team Front Office. I trust in the team to do the right thing for the team. What do you say? 301-230-0980. Let's start with our guy Rylan in Oklahoma City. Go ahead, Rylan.
Morning, Kev. Good talking to you, buddy. Good, man. How you doing?
I'm well. What do you say?
I say I'm Team Front Office on the sole fact that it's the business, and Terry's got to be realistic with where he's at 30. When I was just making some notes here, I'm saying that Terry's greatest attribute is his leadership. And when I think of Terry, I think of those speeches like in the tunnel before they're coming up for the Lions game. What are they going to say about your name? What are they going to say about your identity? Well, what they're going to say about Terry now is that he's a little bit unrealistic. And if I'm AP, I'm giving him 3 years, $30 million guaranteed to be done. I think you need him in the building. I think we need him as a leader.
Well, they're not going to guarantee $90 million.
You don't think?
No, that's way too much guaranteed money. I guess. Yeah.
But I mean, you're going to get three. If his biggest selling thing is his health at 30.
Yeah.
If they're confident,
he may earn the 90. I'm not saying that. They just wouldn't give it to him, in terms of a guarantee.
Fully guaranteed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense, I guess, because you got cash that you got to make king. But yep. I would just say I think they need him in the building. I think he's been playing an important role, and I think if you don't have him opposite Debo and him at his highest level coming out of camp like he should be, it's going to impact start of the season, and I don't want to start slow. So. It'll be interesting. Great time of the year, though. I love listening to you guys every day. I do. So I hope you doing well, and hope you enjoy the camp. And
thanks, Rylan.
Soon, buddy.
Appreciate it. I put it up as a Twitter poll at Kevin Sheehan DC. Whose side are you on? Are you more Team Terry or more Team Front Office? I just put it up. I'll give you the results as we get more votes in. Let's go to Lee. Lee's calling from North Carolina. Terry's officially a holdout. Are you more Team Terry or are you more Team Front Office?
Good day. Thanks for taking my call. Terry has been a stable ever since he's been here. When he came from Ohio State, he came with Haskins. Terry is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he was a Redskin. He was a football team, and now he's a commander.
All three.
I think he's the only. I think he's the only one on the team that been through this. So hello, I'm definitely behind Team Terry, and we need to step up because with him not on the field, the productivity of their offense is hideous, and we seen it last year, and we don't have nobody right now that's comparable to Terry. So if Terry's not on that field, their offense is going to sputter big time, and it's going to set Jaden back quite a bit. So
you really think
his
so?
Value is worth.
I think that's a question for maybe even later in the show or tomorrow. Like, what would they look like? What would they be without Terry? I can't get to that point where I think that's pretty dramatic that the offense would essentially, shut down without him. I think, you've seen great elite quarterbacks elevate everybody around him. And I think that's what Jaden has the ability to do. And I think we saw that last year. Olamide Zaccheaus had his best year. Noah Brown had his best year. De'Ami Brown had his best year. So I think that, and Terry, made some of that happen as well by just being on the field. So we didn't really, I don't think we really got a chance to see the team without Terry. He didn't miss any time last year. Am I forgetting something?
No, he didn't.
Yeah.
No, he didn't.
You said we saw what it looked like without him out there.
No, he didn't miss no time. But when he wasn't on that field, they didn't have pretty much no one to go to. It was Jaden using his legs pretty much when he was down
really?
in the game.
I didn't. I'd have to go back and break down every play that Terry wasn't in to see what it looked like without him. But Lee, good call. Appreciate it. Let's go to our guy Joe in Springfield. Joe, with the holdout now officially, and we are in contract standoff mode. Whose side are you on? Team Terry or team front office?
Hey, Kevin, how you doing? Love the topic as always.
Thanks,
I
Joe.
would say and you're welcome. Yeah, I'm still leaning with the front office. I mean, it is alarming that Terry is not out there training game because I thought that he would, as a team player, he would always be out there in this kind of situation. So I was a little confused by that. But I'm still leaning towards the front office. And Kevin, it's interesting. One person whose name we have not brought up during this whole situation is Josh Harris. You have not heard his name at all.
I don't want to hear his name.
Adam we trust. Exactly, but that's a good thing, Kevin, because the previous ownership would have been all over this. The fact that Adam Peters is handling this the whole time, that is a positive sign. So who knows if it does? I mean, I still believe it's going to get done. I still believe at Adam Peters that we can handle this, and you're right. I would rather not hear from him again until the season opener or the end of the season.
I don't want to hear from Josh Harris until the season's over. We heard from him during the offseason. I don't know, maybe right before the season starts, there's a Josh Harris, quick press conference. No, that's a really good point, Joe. I didn't even think about that. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, obviously. Dan Snyder, didn't come out. He was such a recluse. We didn't, we knew that things were going on behind the scenes, but yeah, with one of his favorite players, it would have been done for sure. And it would have been done even if the front office and the coaching staff didn't want it to be done. Yeah, we do not want to hear that Josh Harris got in the middle of this and decided, no, go ahead and pay him. I trust Adam Peters, Lance Newmark, Brandon Sosna, all the people they hired. All right. And I trust that Josh Harris will let them do their job. Let's go to our guy, JYD. JYD, Team Terry or Team Front Office? Go ahead.
I got to be a little bit on Terry's side because I think looking at their schedule and everybody that they got to play this year, why cut your nose off to spite your face? You basically need, you could kill, the momentum and everything that you built up, last year or whatever. And, later on, some tension is going to amount to this or whatever. And it's not going to be good for either side or whatever. Because yesterday I heard the guys on the radio just before you came on, I wanted to talk to you yesterday, but this diabetes was kicking my tail, so I had to go to the doctor. But the whole thing, they said that the general manager and Dan Quinn, they showed up Monday, I guess, with the camp and stuff, whatever, and they had their shorts on and everything, and it seems like they was just chilling or whatever. Well, that's okay. You chilling, but are you really chilling? You got your number one receiver that you need out there on the field to go along with Debo or whatever, and you need to get it done. And this also
I think they're trying to get it done.
Debo.
I mean, at least one thing that's not, I think, in question is desire. I think both sides want a long-term deal. But the team has to make sure that they're doing what's in the best interest of the team, and not setting some crazy precedent. But to your point, I think, JYD, and I got to move on. I got a hard break here coming up. Everybody on hold, stay there. We'll continue to take calls. Team Terry or team front office. I don't have a problem in this situation paying a premium, but I do always have a problem with paying way above what you think the player is worth. We went through that for 10 to 11 years, and then we went the other way with Bruce Allen. But you don't want to be the franchise that's overpaying, especially players as they're heading into their 30s. And I don't think Terry's going to decline significantly in the short term. I don't. But I trust that they know what they're doing. I trust that they understand the market. I trust that they understand their short-term plan, their medium-range plan, their long-term plan. I don't think we've got a bunch of dummies, working on this in the front office. I think these guys are experienced. I know Adam Peters is a new general manager. He's never been in this role before, and this is the biggest deal he's ever done. Remember, from his side, this is the first time that he's done a deal like this where he's the final say-so. But I trust them. And at the same time, I can feel for Terry, too. But I'm team front office on this one. That's how I lean. How do you lean? 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. This from Mark Seagraves from Channel 4. According to sources, Chairman Phil Mendelssohn is close to announcing a deal with the Commanders that will change some of the financial terms of the Mayor Bowser original deal and open the door for a council vote within days after public hearings. I believe the public hearings are next week. I think they're the 28th and the 29th, or the 29th and the 30th. So that sounds like major progress, at least according to Mark Seagraves, Channel 4. Phil Mendelssohn close to announcing a deal with the team. I'm say that again. I'm sorry.
Saying Bowser is on the Junkies tomorrow in studio, so it could be tied into that.
Mayor Bowser is okay.
Yep,
Mayor Bowser is on tomorrow morning with the
Mhm.
Junkies.
I
What
think
time?
at 9 a.m.
9 a.m. So you can hear it right here on the Team 980. The Mayor on with the Junkies tomorrow morning. Also, I saw this tweeted out. Hold on, let me just see. Something about Sam Cosmi. Dan Quinn, I guess, said something this morning that Sam Cosmi. Here it is. Bram tweeted out. Quinn says it's on the table for Cosmi to play in week 1. There's no certainty of it, but it's a sign of his recovery from the knee ligament injury and that it's going very well. All right, 301-230-0980. We will be, pretty much on the air, now I'm going to have some days off coming up just to give you a heads up, but this show will be on the air a lot of the time that practice is going on and news is coming out. So tune in, every day 10 to 1 on the Team 980 or the team980.com or on our YouTube page, because this is when they're practicing, not every day at this time. And you get a lot of, pressers like Quinn before practice and Jaden Daniels after practice. I think Bobby Wagner is expected to speak as well after practice today. Already the tweets are flying about how great Jaden Daniels looks in 7-on-7, I would imagine. Ben Standig will be with us at noon. All right, the question at 301-230-0980, with us officially in this, for the lack of a better description, stalemate, standoff, deadlock between Terry and the team. Whose side are you on? Team Terry or Team Front Office? I do have a Twitter poll up at Kevin Sheehan DC on X on Twitter. If you want to check it out. Right now, pretty tight. 52.8% Team Terry, 47.2% Team Front Office, with over 400 votes already in. What do you say on the phone lines? 301-230-0980. Ian, go ahead.
First of all, I believe a deal will be done. Both sides tend to benefit from this. The team does not have an adequate replacement. They did not draft somebody. There's nobody in line. I don't think Deebo Samuel is a viable option. So I think both sides need this deal to be done. But in terms of your question, I am Team Terry. His resume as a Washington Commander, Redskin football player speaks for itself. Adam Peters, as general manager, has some hits and has some misses. His hits in the draft are Jaden, obvious. Mikey Sandersfield, obvious. There's some TBDs or misses in the draft.
All the rest of them are TBDs. You don't evaluate a draft after one season. Even you wouldn't do that.
Sure. His free agent acquisitions, Luvu, Wagner hits.
Ertz,
I would say
Eckler hits.
I don't know. I don't know if
Armstrong, kind of a hit.
Factor. To me, to be a hit, you got to be a Pro Bowler. No, again, my criteria to be a hit is to make a Pro Bowl team. They didn't do that.
Oh, really?
And then his misses. Yeah.
You don't sign every free agent with the idea that they're going to make a Pro Bowl.
Sure, but I'm
especially
saying
with the deals that they paid out. They were almost all, low offer short-term deals.
Sure. But again, I'm
Marcus Mariota
resume, and he again, I wouldn't. Would you call? Mariota
the list keeps going on. Ian Allegretti started every game last year. Tyler Biotish.
Come on, man. No, come on, man. Kevin, we all
He did
know
very
they
well
made
in
the
free
NFC
agency
title
last
game.
year.
Kevin, we all understand they made the NFC title game on the back of Jaden Daniels.
That's a different subject.
If you're looking at his free agent acquisitions and you're doing a resume, you would say his hits are obviously Luvu and Wagner. They made the Pro Bowl. They were all pro players.
Biotish was a hit.
Sure.
I mean, if we're talking about hits, Tyler Biotish was significant last year.
Okay,
Significant.
let's say he's in
Austin
your
Eckler, I'm not
medium.
sure they looked better in the backfield than when Eckler was out there. Zach Ertz was so significant last year in clutch situations, in big games.
I feel, again,
you're way
describing-
underselling the free agency class of 2024 for Adam Peters and company. Way underselling
I
it.
think a lot of those guys are just guys. If Zach Ertz wasn't on the
Back
team,
to your point,
the win total doesn't
believing in
change.
Terry and taking Terry's side is totally reasonable. I'm not knocking that at all. But my reasons wouldn't be that I'm not really sold yet on Adam Peters because of his free agent class last year. It only produced 2 hits. That's just not true.
Well, again, when I'm evaluating Peters, he doesn't have enough of a resume here for me to take his side over Terry,
Fair enough.
who does have a resume here.
Right. Yeah, look, that's fair. 1 year, just like you can't evaluate a draft in 1 year, it's hard to evaluate a general manager in 1 year. But I went in, as you know, in sort of survival benefit of the doubt mode because it's like, finally, we can live a little bit here. And year 1 was not disappointing, clearly. But it's only 1 year, to your point. And this is the first big contract situation he has had as a general manager in his career. So let's see what happens. I mean, he'll get judged a little bit on this, no doubt. But no bigger judgment was going to be made on Adam Peters than the first draft choice he made, because that was the most crucial towards the team's future. And we all believe, even though it's only been a year, that he got that one right. Thank you, Ian. Let's go to Robert in Annapolis. Robert, team Terry or team front office on this?
Well, thanks for taking my call, Kevin. But
sure.
I don't have a side in this. But if I did, I would never want my GM to capitulate to a player's demands. That's the Vinny Serrato method of being a GM. So here's the things that are fair certainties. They're not going to pay him $30 million a year, because if they were, they'd already have done that. And they probably don't want to guarantee him serious coin after the next 2 years because of the quarterback situation. So they're at a standstill. You know where this could wind up? Trent Williams situation.
No.
Remember that?
No, there was
Not
bad
just
blood between Trent Williams and
well,
Dan
there
and
was,
Bruce.
But Trent Williams sat out the 2019 season. It's not
Yeah.
a very good financial move for a player to do that. But McLaurin may be so principled that he may actually do that. I actually think he's going to play under his current contract, because I don't think they're going to come to an agreement, and it wouldn't make sense for him to do otherwise. So I think that's probably how it's going to wind up. And one quick thing I want to add on the waiving of fines, that applies to veteran players who have signed a second contract. I believe if a player is still on a rookie contract, the fines can be waived, but don't hold me to that. But I believe that's what that CBA specifies. But anyhow,
okay. I think
now
as long as you've got time left on your deal, if you're a free agent, you're a free agent. Obviously, you're not signed by anybody. But you just actually brought up something, because I think this is.
But my
you just
my
gave
thing
me an
is the
idea
waiving
for
of
another
fines.
segment.
You
Go ahead.
You could have a player on a rookie deal coming into the fourth year, depending upon what round he was drafted in. They could sit out, and the team would have the authority, if they signed a deal, to waive those fines. That's my understanding of how it works. But not like in McLaurin. He signed a second contract. So if he's under contract, remember Trent Williams, I think, well, some of them are on the tag. When they're on the tag, that would also apply. But anyhow, I'll shut up now so your friend in Virginia can come in and talk about soft tissue injuries.
Thank
All
you.
right, buddy. Thank you.
Yeah, here, holdouts come at a hefty cost. Players are fined $50,000 for each day they hold out. Previously, teams could waive those fines, but the loophole was closed under the current collective bargaining agreement, which was ratified in March of 2020. Now, and I think this was what Robert was talking about, only players on rookie contracts can get that relief. Thank you, Robert, for that. Let's go to Billy. Billy, are you team Terry or team front office?
Kevin, good morning. First thing I'd say is shout out, Godspeed to the Prince of Darkness. That was a hell of a good run he had as a rock and roll performer.
I was not a huge Black Sabbath guy or a big Ozzy guy, but I certainly have friends, including one of my sons who's a musician who was definitely into it. So, rest in peace, 76, too young. But he lived a hard, fast life, that's for sure.
His body was 140, they said.
Yeah.
You know what Ozzy would have said? Nobody knows because nobody could understand him. Listen, our friends in Baltimore, I just reminded you'd have 3 more Super Bowls if he would have kept Falco as a quarterback. Terry is, in gangster terms, and we're all fans of the gangster movie genre, he's a made guy here. He is, and you don't mess with a made guy. And Adam is messing up. And this is the first time, and they did a heck of a job last year. NFC Championship, would have won the Super Bowl if they didn't turn the ball over 4 times against Philly. He's a made guy. You don't mess with a made guy. That's the bottom line. And he should have found a way to get him paid. I mean, $15 million this year. If any of us were in that position where we're at the top of our craft and looking at other players who are making twice as much money as we are, you'd have to find a way as the front office to get the guy signed. And this is the first real, outside of not changing the names, which is just idiocy. They got to change the team name. It's the first real chink in the armor in the first year. They got everything else basically right. And then just to remind the fans,
is it going here for you? Okay. Who is, you've already got Jaden as the greatest of all time and a first ballot Hall of Famer. For you, if they don't get a deal done with Terry, are you going to be impacted at all when the season starts?
Kevin, just to remind, and the question, three games, 14 catches, 227 yards, and 3 touchdowns in the playoffs. That guy was a playoff baller. I think that's important. I'm not going to be affected, dude. All I know is that great teams at the end of the year, when the time comes, have great cultures. And this is not good for the culture. This is bad for the culture. And I loved the culture last year. I thought they all played hard. I was proud of the team as a team. The Commander's name's dumbest in history. But outside of that, I hope it doesn't mess with the culture because that's a team. I
bet it doesn't.
90 guys
Billy,
right
I
now
bet it doesn't.
As a pro.
I'm not saying that people aren't going to be upset that Terry's not there, but Terry's going to be there. Terry is going to be there. He's playing for this team in 2025. If they trade him or he holds out when regular season games begin, I will be so much more shocked than I was that he didn't at least show up and hold in yesterday. I just don't see that happening. You can't trade him at this point. You're not going to get enough back. Thank you,
Adam's
Billy.
riding a crazy train right now. That's all I'll say. Adam's riding a crazy train.
I don't think so. I trust that they know what they're doing. And again, for us to be definitive one side or the other without knowing what the team has offered and what Terry's asking for and what that delta really is, that's kind of crazy town because we're going to do this and we're going to have our hunches and our feels for this, but we don't have enough information. Like if the team offered, let's just say the team was down in, hold on, let me pull up the list. They're down there in the, Nico Collins range of about $24 million. By the way, Nico Collins is really good. Like he's going to be, I think he's on his way to becoming a star. Let's just say they offered him less than T. Higgins got. Okay. T. Higgins would be a number 1 on a lot of teams. He may have the best hands in football. But he's a number 2 in Cincinnati. He's still got a an average annual of $28.75 million per season. If they're under T. Higgins at say 28 or 27 million, I could see why Terry, who wants a DK Metcalf deal at 32 to 33 million, is like, are you kidding me? You can't at least get up to something that starts with a 3? But again, I trust that they know what they're doing. I do, but we don't know what the number is for the team. We don't know what the number is for Terry, and we don't know where both of those sides would feel comfortable settling on. Sometimes when you make that first offer and the other side comes back and it is way off, you're just in, dude, we need you to come back to reality so that we can negotiate in better faith. I don't know that that's it. I'm just throwing out one scenario, meaning that the team, didn't even counter the counter because they felt like it was completely off base. All right, stay on hold. I see everybody there. Team Terry or team front office? Terry is officially a holdout. This thing has reached an impasse. We are in standoff, standstill, whatever you want to say, territory. Of course, it could end by this afternoon, too. So keep it locked here on the Team 980 all day long. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. The voting is pretty close on this. Right now, 51.5% are Team Terry in the standoff and holdout situation. 48.5% Team Front Office. Phone lines are open, 301-230-0980. I'm going to get to all of you, I promise. Ben will join us at 12. Stephen A. had a suggestion about a stadium somewhere between Baltimore and Washington that is truly one of the most idiotic things that's ever come out of his mouth. And there's been a lot of it, even though I'll tell you what, man, I respect the game. Nobody grinds it. Nobody works harder than he does. All right, back to, are you Team Terry or Team Front Office? I'm leaning Team Front Office. I just have great trust in them. And at the same time, like I said, I do feel for Terry. Like, I think there are situations where both sides can make, reasonable arguments as to why they should, pay out or receive a number, even when positions are far apart. I've said for a while, and I have not said it yet today, I think it's a deal somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 million and 60 to 70 guaranteed. Amon-Ra St. Brown 15 months ago signed a deal for 77 and guaranteed, just over 30 million on average. It was a 4-year deal. He was 24 when he signed it. He's very good. Okay, I don't want to get into it. This is not about Amon-Ra versus Terry, but certainly, the ESPN top 10 list had him number 6, had Terry number 11. And you had guys in our organization that negotiated that deal. So I think something like 30 and 60, 30 on average, 60 guaranteed. The years they can figure out how much of it's front loaded to make room for Jaden's deal in 2 years. They can figure that stuff out. But I think if he were at just over $30 million a year, somewhere where Amon-Ra St. Brown is, that would put him as like the 7th or 8th highest paid player in the game in terms of average annual. I think that that's where it's going to come in at, if it does come in somewhere. And I think that that would be kind of fair to both sides. And even if the team felt like they were paying a slight premium on that because of his age, that would be okay with me. A slight premium. I think, he's the kind of player you do give a slight premium to, because he's bringing so much more than just what he's producing on the field. All right, Team Terry or Team Front Office? Bob in Ocean City has been on hold for a while. Bob, thank you. Go ahead.
Great show, Kevin, as always. I've listened to everybody today. Everybody brings great points. Here's the thing. He was a Redskin. He's still a Redskin. He's been there. This team was fantastic last year. Peters is a great, great general manager. I agree with all your points of all the free agents he brought in, Joe. This is the cornerstone decision for the next 10 years.
This one?
Do you want? Yes, because this one will reflect every other issue in the future of people that might be disgruntled of money. It's about a team great player. We've made all the deals with Von Miller, this and that. The pieces of the puzzle are falling together for a Super Bowl run this year. That's how serious this issue is, Kevin. Do you want to be the foundation block in the sunshine to be number 17, or you want it to be Peters? That's how important this deal is right now.
Okay.
And if I'm Terry, I'm hold up minimum 7 days, and I'm with Terry, because this will reflect that building block that already set last year.
What if Terry's asking for an ungodly sum? Like, he's asking to be paid just less than the clear-cut 2 best receivers in the game, Chase and Jefferson, and isn't budging off that. I don't know that. I don't know what the real numbers are, but what if he is asking for that? No way in hell do I want the team to capitulate to that.
So my number really, Kevin, is right around a 32 a year, and give him the 65 guaranteed, and end it.
You know, if it ended there, I'd be fine. I think that's a premium, though. I think you're definitely paying for Terry to be a part of your organization moving forward. Yeah, that's top five-ish money.
I know what premium is. I know what premium, Kevin. I've sat in the end zone 55 years. I've seen all the great quarterbacks play. The receivers we got are a long way from Terry McLaurin, buddy. You know it. I know it. Everybody on team knows it. NFL knows it. The puzzle's almost complete. Don't wreck the puzzle, Kevin. Foundation blocks are it. This man has been everything every fan has enjoyed. I'm talking about the fans now, Kevin. It's not the business side.
I care more about the organization winning and doing the right thing. But I'm hearing you. Look, I'm not. I feel your passion for Terry, but if they don't get a long-term deal done with Terry, and we find out that the offers were fair offers, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. He's going to play this year. He's a pros pro, which means he's going to go out and still be Terry McLaurin, even if they don't get a deal done, and we can deal with this next offseason. But I'm not going to lose a lot of sleep or a lot of faith in the front office
let me ask you
over
this,
this
Kevin.
one.
If they don't get the deal done, they're going to franchise him next year. That sets another precedent. Okay? We've been down that road before.
Yeah,
we never want to use the
different,
franchise tag.
Quarterback's different.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Listen, a great Redskin, listen, our next 10 picks on the first 3 rounds the next 3 years, if they're half as good as Terry McLaurin, they're all successes, Kevin.
Right. You're right about that. He's been terrific.
He's the only diamond in the rough.
He's not a Hall of Famer. Let's not get carried away. Not that you are. But he's probably a Ring of Famer for this franchise, no doubt. Thanks, Bob. I want to move on. I appreciate your passion. Let's go to Robert in Largo. Robert, Team Terry or Team Front Office?
Well, I'm Team Terry, Big J. How you feeling, Coach Dan?
Good, Robert. What's going on, man?
Not a whole lot, man. Not a whole lot. I'm going to run it down real quick, man, and I'm going to get off and let you answer. Terry's 30 isn't everybody else's 30. I mean, and it's not Mike Evans 30. Terry only been in the league 6 years. He's going on his 7th year now. He's got 5 1,000-yard seasons, and only reason he didn't get it his rookie year was because he was short about 90 yards, and he's had a different quarterback almost every season throughout this time. All right, he's 13th in touchdowns in the NFL last season, second only to Jamar Chase. All right, the contested catches, he's number 1 in the NFL, and it's not even close. Right, he's had less catches than probably every top 10 wide receiver in the league right now. Right, now I also have a question for you, man. There's been about it was a $20 million jump in the salary cap last year, right?
Right.
For this year. So, on average, how does that look from this point moving forward?
It's going to keep going up.
Exactly. So if you don't pay Terry, who you going to pay? And as far as the numbers are concerned, I understand we got to pay Jaden in the next couple of years. I get that 100%. But if you front load,
got to pay Tunsil too. You're probably going to have to pay Luvu too.
That is true. That is true. But we're not really paying anybody right now, so we got money. That's not the issue. At least I don't think. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm not an expert. I'm just saying.
I don't know. I don't even know if that's really the point here. They want to set a precedent with their first big contract signing that they are fair, but they're also not marks. They're also not suckers. And I agree that it's okay to look like you got a little bit pricey. You got a little bit, paid a little bit of a premium for a guy like Terry McLaurin. I understand that, but you can't go nuts. You can't go nuts because we've been through that as a fan base. We know what it looks like paying guys heading into their 30s, 30% above retail. That does not work out. And by the way, that all of a sudden makes the locker room wonder, what'd they do that for? So I think there's just a fine line. It's, they got to thread it somehow. I wish we really knew what was offered, what Terry's asking for. It would make this conversation so much easier. But we don't know that.
Absolutely. But what you think about this, man? $100 million, all right, over 4 years, $80 million guaranteed, right? Front load the contract, put a little bit on the back end. That way, when it's time for Jaden to get paid, everybody's happy. Or just do 3 years, $90 million fully guaranteed. He getting 30 for the next 3 years, and then we'll address it in his 4th year when he's 34. We'll address it when he's 34.
Yeah, I think guaranteed money is always the most important, even more important than average annual. And $80 million guaranteed for a receiver would put him in the top 6 of all time. And everybody else that got those kinds of guarantees, they're all basically 25 years of age or younger. So he's not getting that kind of guaranteed money. He's going to get, guaranteed money. I'm sure he's looking for a DK Metcalf style deal. 32.5 to 33 million a year, 60 million guaranteed. But, they could make the case that the Steelers overpaid Metcalf. Keep in mind, too, Metcalf's 2 years younger. So there's a lot going on here.
But he's outproduced Metcalf, too.
I'm sorry?
He's definitely outproduced Metcalf as well, though, which is the other thing. So even though they may have overpaid for DK Metcalf, they wouldn't be overpaying for Terry because Terry's outproduced DK Metcalf year in and year out.
Yeah. I'd have to look that up because you might be right on that. I don't know for sure. I'm going to pull it up. I think it's pretty close, but there have been times where I've watched DK Metcalf in, Seattle, sometimes even without great quarterback play, dominate games. The one thing I think we would all agree on, and Robert, thanks for the call. Appreciate it because I need to get to some of these other calls. I think in our discussions of Terry, I think we would all agree on, maybe not everybody, Terry's different than some of these guys. He's really good. But Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and even CeeDee Lamb and A.J. Brown and, I think DK Metcalf at times, like Metcalf with his size, Nico Collins with his size, Amon-Ra even in Detroit. You look at the targets, like there are guys you force feed because they can actually dominate a game. That's not Terry. That isn't, and it hasn't been. What he is in that next class, he's really good, and he is contested catch guy. He is threaten a defense deep guy. He is decoy guy, setting up other things for other people. He is a guy that will play every down. He'll block. But he's not a force feed, dominate a game guy. There aren't a lot of those guys. I'm not saying that there are 10 of those guys, but there are 5 or 6 of them. And Metcalf actually has the ability to do that, even though he hasn't. His DK Metcalf, he's missed a couple games the last couple of years. His last 2 years, certainly in receptions, aren't at Terry's, but not far off. Yardage, not far off. He had a 90-catch year. Terry hasn't had one of those. He's had 3 1,000-yard-plus seasons. He's had 2 double-digit touchdown seasons. I don't know. There's something about Metcalf and his imposing, what is he, 6'4", 6'5", 6'4", 235. Like, there's something imposing physically about Metcalf, as there is with A.J. Brown. It'll be interesting to see the combination of Rodgers and Metcalf this year in Pittsburgh. All right, everybody, I see. The phone line's packed still. I'm going to get through all of you, okay? And then we'll talk to Ben at 12. So stay on hold. Team Terry, Team Front Office, Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. I do want to mention Foley Mechanical, a new sponsor of this show. Our HVAC system was having some issues. My wife had Foley Mechanical come out. Dan Foley came out himself. This isn't a corporation. This is a business that's run by Dan Foley. He's heavily involved in everything. He came out, dealt with her directly. He owns 100% of the company, and he's got control over the quality from the equipment to the people he hires and his team. They're professional, they're skilled, and they are sharp. Foley Mechanical is full service, heating, AC, hot water, and boilers, and they are the go-to for older homes with radiator heat. That is their real specialty. They work across DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and they proudly install Amana HVAC equipment. If your system needs help or you just want it done right, call Foley Mechanical or go to FoleyMechanical.com. Tell Dan that I sent you. FoleyMechanical.com. from our guy, Big Tony, Steelers fan, listening to the Metcalf conversation. He said, Terry's the fourth best wide receiver in your division. A.J. Brown, Neighbors, CeeDee Lamb, and now even Pickens in the division. Take off the field with Pickens stuff. He's better. You can't cover him, point blank. Yeah, I mean, if we were ranking receivers in the division, you would definitely have Terry no better than fourth. That's true. I'd have him ahead of Pickens. I would. I'd have him ahead of Devontae Smith. But you would definitely have, although I would not definitely have CeeDee Lamb in front of him. I'm not a big CeeDee Lamb guy, although he is at times uncheckable. I'll concede that. You'd go A.J. Brown, Malik Neighbors, and CeeDee Lamb in front of Terry. No doubt in the division. But all three of those guys are always ranked ahead of him on any of these lists. Although Neighbors wasn't in the NFL top 100 because Terry hasn't been listed yet, and Neighbors already has. Pat in Hyattsville. Pat, thank you so much. I know you've been on hold for a while. Team Terry or team front office? Go ahead.
Hey, Kev. Love your show. You're a great host, period. But let me say this. I think it's three different things on here. You're either logo, player, or front office. And I don't understand why y'all radio hosts are always front office. Always.
Really?
But always. You guys support that to the T. And I get that. But if the Eagles can afford to pay two players, two wide receivers, over 28, they're not willing to give Terry over 28? That sounds ridiculous.
What's Devontae Smith
Sometimes
make?
you have to make moves. Go ahead.
Yeah, Devontae makes 25 a year.
Devontae makes 25 a year. Terry makes 23.
Yep.
Okay, how much does Brown make?
Brown, in terms of average annuals, 32.
Okay, so if Terry is your number one receiver and they're doing that, you can't bring up his salary to match?
They're of course. When you say you can't bring up their salary, are you suggesting that their offer is where he is right now at $22.75 million a year on average?
No, even let's say it's 25 or 26.
Yeah.
He's your number one receiver. And I agree with you. I don't think Terry's a number one receiver. I think he's a B plus. I think he's a B plus, and
I think he's a number one receiver on most teams. I just don't think he's an elite receiver. I think that's what you're saying.
I don't think he's a number one. I think he's
well, if you don't think he's a number one receiver, then what are we talking about here? What do you want them to pay him?
Then you have to pay according to what you want. If right now you drafted Neighbors and you said, okay, this is our number one, we can afford to let you go, that's fine. But sometimes you have to give an inch to get a mile.
Yeah.
And
you
right
really
now,
don't think Terry's a number one receiver, Pat?
I don't think NFL wise he's a number one receiver. I think he's a B plus.
Okay, maybe we're talking about two different things. On how many teams would he be the best receiver, AKA the number one receiver on the team? How many teams? 20?
If you sent him to Tennessee, he might be a number one. If he stays with you, he's a number one. But if you send him to the Cowboys, he's a 2. If you send him to the Eagles, he's a 2.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, there are 10 or 11 guys that are number ones that are better, but that leaves another 21 teams in which I think he would certainly be vying to be the number one receiver on that team. Anyway,
and I got you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, when you say he's not a number one receiver, yes, he is. Just not on every team.
NFL level.
Justin
NFL
Jefferson
level.
and Jamar Chase, whichever one you think is the best, is the only one that would be a number one receiver on every team in the league, right?
CeeDee Lamb would be a number one receiver on every team.
No, he wouldn't.
And
He wouldn't be in Cincinnati. He wouldn't be in Minnesota.
He wouldn't be in Minnesota?
No.
No, you're right. It'd be a 1+ and a 1A. It'd be a 1 and 1A.
Okay, I
There
mean,
wouldn't be a 1A.
we're getting sidetracked. Are you team Terry or team front office?
Honestly, I'm Team Terry because I support the player. But if he gets cut, everybody gets over it. Within a year, everybody's over it because everybody is Team Logo.
He's not going to get cut. He's under contract.
No, I'm just saying, if he was to leave,
Yeah,
it wouldn't really bother anybody.
If he were to get traded or if he plays on the current contract, I am with you. I think while the emotions are running high right now, I think most fans would get over it and move on. Pat, thanks for the call. Let's go to JoJo in Hyattsville. JoJo, thanks for holding. Are you Team Terry or Team front office?
I'm kind of split. He's your leader. You can't set the precedence of letting him hold out to strong-arm you for a contract that, yeah, he kind of deserves, but he kind of doesn't at the same time. So you can't let him do what they did in San Francisco with Brandon Ayuk, who didn't deserve that contract whatsoever, but they wanted him on the field. You can't set yourself up like that for the long haul. I don't care what he is on our team. You got to pay him what he is in the league.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Brandon Ayuk situation is an interesting situation because this time last year, coming off the season that he had the year before when they went to the Super Bowl, where, he caught, 1,400 yards worth of passes. I think he was the highest average in terms of yards per reception in the league. You saw a guy coming into his own and on the verge of blowing up into a big-time star receiver. That was my view anyway, watching him in 2023. And then last year, obviously, he got hurt and missed much of the year. Thanks, JoJo. Let's go to Daryl in Capitol Heights. Daryl, Team Terry or Team front office?
Hey, what's up, Kevin?
How are you, Daryl?
I'm all right. Definitely Team Terry. Like I was telling your man on the phone, I heard you say the locker room's like, why'd you pay this guy? I think the locker room's like, why aren't you paying this guy?
I think that's what it is right now. What I said was if they ended up paying like a massive 20-30% over premium and he's like sitting there just below Chase and Jefferson at $34.5 million a year, I think there would be some eye rolling around the league and maybe even in their own building. But I don't think they'll ever get to that point. But go ahead.
I see what you mean. All right. Well, to that point, though, like D-Mitch always says, you got to pay what the league is paying. So you pay your number one, what everybody else is getting in the league, and that's 30 plus. So you got to pay them. It is what it is.
Yeah, there are some number ones that aren't making 30 a year, and they're younger players like DJ Moore and Nico Collins, and guys like that. And by the way, both of those guys are pretty damn good receivers. I would take Terry in front of DJ Moore. I would. Nico Collins is interesting because I think with CJ Stroud, he's got a chance to become one of the best in the game, no doubt. Let's go to Zach. Zach, Team Terry or Team front office? I'm trying to get through all of these, but go quickly. Go.
Yeah, I'm Team Terry simply because if we don't pay Terry, I'm just thinking about our team if we don't have Terry on our team. If we don't have Terry on our team, we don't really have the draft compensation to actually get a number one receiver. Because actually after this year, we're going to have a lot of holes on our team because we have a lot of veterans. And the only way you get an elite receiver, I keep hearing people say Terry's not an elite receiver. The only way you get a top 5 receiver in the NFL is if you draft him before the 22nd pick. Last year, we had the 29th pick in the draft. If everything goes right this year, we're going to have a high 29 pick. We're not going to be able to trade for an elite receiver. And people keep saying all these elite receivers, they're young, so they're not leaving their team. So if we don't have Terry, we don't have anything for Jayden to throw to. And as much as people believe that great quarterbacks win without great receivers, great quarterbacks don't win without elite pass catchers. Patrick Mahomes has been
Patrick
great.
Mahomes did. Josh Allen did. They were both in the championship game last year. I mean, Mahomes literally had nothing.
He's the number one pass catcher.
I'm sorry?
Kelsey's the number one elite pass catcher. Josh Allen
not at 38 or 37 or 36 years old. I mean, he came up clutch in some big games, but Mahomes did not have a lot to work with. Josh Allen didn't have, Keon Coleman a bit too young at this point. even Lamar, I went through this when ESPN put out their top 10 wide receiver list, that there was no Chief, no Bill, no Raven, not only in the top 10, they weren't in the honorable mention or others receiving votes category. By the way, you made a point at the beginning, and I got to run. I'm not going to get to all of you guys. I'm sorry. We can come back to this maybe a little bit later on next hour or tomorrow. But you made a point about you don't get a great wide receiver unless you take him in the top 22. I'm assuming that you're talking about Justin Jefferson, who I think was number 22. The Eagles passed on him, remember, and took Jalen Reagor. But Tyreek Hill was not a first-rounder. Amon-Ra St. Brown wasn't a first-rounder. Was Nico Collins a first-rounder? I don't think so. I'm not giving you the best of the – I mean, Tyreek Hill, yes. Chase, very high. Jefferson, very high. CeeDee Lamb, I think high. A.J. Brown. Where was A.J. Brown drafted? He was a first or second rounder?
I think he was second.
He was second, right? Second. Yep, here it is. Second rounder. So you can get receivers. Malik Neighbors was very high. Garrett Wilson was very high, right? But a guy like Puka Nacua, what was he selected in the 5th round? Something like that. Cooper Kupp was, way down the list, 3rd or 4th or 5th round or something like that. Anyway, all right. For all of those people out there, all of you who were on hold and I did not get to, I apologize. Maybe we come back to this after Ben. Ben's up next. Day one of training camp in the books. Dan Quinn spoke before, and I guess Jaden Daniels has either spoken or will be speaking soon. Ben Standig is joining us right now from Ashburn. He'll be with us all week long and a lot more during camp. Ben is on X on Twitter at Ben Standig, and Ben has just launched a Substack column and format for himself. You can find it at lastmanstandig.substack.com, but you can get, a link to it at Ben's X account at Ben Standig. All right. What do you got? First day at camp. First of all, let's go back to yesterday. Are you surprised? Like I was surprised. I thought he would hold in. What was your reaction when he didn't report and he's still not in? Terry, we're talking about, of course.
Yeah, yes, of course. I mean, I don't want to sit here and say I wasn't surprised. I was wondering, okay, as much as he spoke about it, last week and clearly expressed his frustration, to then show up on day one, even as a hold-in, maybe shows it's, you're not, you're frustrated, you're annoyed, you want this, you're feeling a little disrespected, but maybe it's not as big of a deal to an extent if you're holding in. So I was wondering if maybe day one he makes a point. It's it's $50,000 fine, but if we're talking about a $30 million a year contract, that's not much. The question will be day two. Is he here? Is he check in later today? If we get to day two, day three, then I think this is becoming a bigger deal. Obviously the team is taking the positive view right now, and at least publicly, and not speaking ill in any way, shape, or form. So we'll see. Adam Peters said yesterday that the two sides have spoken a bit, and we'll see how long this goes. It's the fine. I mean, even if you're making a lot of money, the fines of $50,000 a day certainly can add up. And also this, nobody ever wants this, but I just don't, this team was such a, positive vibes feeling last year. And Terry is a guy who, at a position where you have all these known divas historically, he's the opposite of that. So this feels out of character for kind of everybody, but at the same time, it's the business of football. And, we'll see how dug in both sides are.
On the DEFCON scale, which DEFCON 5 is the lowest state of readiness, all right, that is total peacetime. Everything's going to be just fine. Up to DEFCON 1, where nuclear war is imminent or has already begun. Where are we today on the DEFCON scale?
First of all, the DEFCON scale, it messes me up every time. I appreciate you explaining it, because
it should be the other way around, I think. But anyway.
It doesn't make any sense. I don't know, man. I'm going to stay with my 5 that I've been at, this whole time. Again, I've been saying, wake me up when we get to training camp and the deal's not done. Well, okay, that's now happened. I'm going to give it a little more time, though. I mean, not only is there a long way to go before the season starts, like, for example, today, it was basically an OTA. There was not, one day it's not going to change the chemistry between McLaurin and Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury. It was, they practiced, they did stuff, but this was not a robust session. So it didn't miss really anything today. But, you get through a few more days, and like I said, that becomes more complicated. So I'll stay at a 5. You ask me this tomorrow, and if he's not here, maybe you remind me that the next step is a 4, so maybe I'll do that. But I'm still at 5. I just still have a hard time believing this can't get done.
So you think that there's a decent chance, it sounds like, that he is, in this evening or in tomorrow morning, and he's ready to take the field tomorrow. Is that with or without a new deal?
Well, I mean, let's be clear. I don't know that at all. I mean, and even if he showed up, it may be as a hold in. Just to avoid the fine and be around. So, until the contract is done at this stage, I'm kind of imagining, he's not going to practice. Now, again, if we start getting into, multiple preseason games have gone by, then, maybe it's an all bets are off scenario. It's hard to get a total read because the team is not saying much about this at all. When they are speaking, they're pretty positive I mean, they're taking the high road. They're optimistic, just like they were about last year. So they're not, there's no, this isn't like the Bengals situation where it's obviously it's very, very contentious between Trey Hendrickson and the organization. And, also, again, knowing the people involved, Terry is not somebody who, you think is going to be a huge problem from an attitude perspective or anything along those lines. So that's why I'm sort of staying with, I think this gets done. But yeah, no, I don't. I'm just saying he could show up tomorrow for a hold-in scenario just to avoid the fines and sort of make the point. But that's what's interesting to me. If he's really not out here the next couple of days, no matter in what scenario, then you have to start taking. I'm going to have to start taking this a little more seriously.
I think I'm taking it more seriously now because I think the combination of last week's 35-minute sound off and the fact that he didn't post, I think is a real indication that it's not just that they're far apart, but that this has been hurtful to him. He's not happy. And the hard part for us is we don't really know enough to take a side legitimately other than just hunch and history. And I'm just wondering, are you hearing anything on what the delta is between what they offered and what he wants?
No, I mean, not enough to say like definitively it's this. I think I had told you this before. I had heard from somebody who was not part of either camp, but somebody who, I think based on who the person is who could easily hear some things. And I was told that the Washington's initial offer or initial, point for them was something below T. Higgins, which is like around $28.7 million. I don't know if below means just below or below means closer to where Mike Evans is, which is, I think, around the $24 million range. Now, Mike Evans is a hell of a receiver, right? One of the best in the league for the last decade. But, and he took a hometown discount, but it seems like he did a little bit. If they're aiming towards that and saying, hey, Mike Evans is great, you're great, here we go, that's not work, right? So if it's that, if they really are down there, that's a problem. If they're at the T. Higgins number, is that good enough? I don't know. Again, if you're the Terry side, you look at DK Metcalf, somebody who was in Terry's class. Terry has outproduced DK Metcalf. He's been more consistent than DK Metcalf. Seattle decided they were willing to trade Metcalf and move on from that. And then he gets a massive deal from the Steelers that Terry's got to be going, well, wait a minute. You can't tell me that he's better than me. But as we know, that's not always how these things work. DK Metcalf is the freakiest of freak athletes.
Yeah.
He's younger than Terry. And, T. Higgins is 5 years younger than Terry. And, one of the things when McLaurin spoke last week and I asked him about the notion of age, that he's turning 30 this year and it feels like that may be one of the issues. He just basically like, come on, get out of here. I'm not old. I've had no injuries, very little wear and tear relative to other players at my age for a variety of reasons. No, I'm not buying, he's like, people act like I'm walking around with a cane. No. So that's where it gets interesting. And, you and I have said this now 50 times, but what is interesting for us, if we can avoid getting caught up in any potential drama here, is that we are getting to see how Adam Peters and the organization are going to handle these things. And as you pointed out, the 49ers were often, not that Peters was running the negotiation, but they often would take their time, so to speak, with some of their free agents. And these situations would go on into camp and beyond, deeper. So maybe that's just where we're at. Maybe Adam Peters is going to be a hardline kind of a guy, which we're not viewing it in that way because, he's not an old and crusty guy like a Bill Belichick. He's even if he doesn't say much in press conferences, a pretty nice guy, pretty amenable. There's no, almost seems a little bit shy at times. He's not arrogant. So it's like, wait, is a guy really going to be a hardliner? I don't know definitively, but that's what's interesting here. And like you said, we don't know the numbers. We don't know the delta between these positions, but we also don't know what's being said behind the scenes and what's the attitude is. Is Adam Peters, giving, being pretty forceful with what he's at. That's going to be with the fascinating angle to learn about once this ever gets done.
Yeah, I'd really, more than even the numbers, although the numbers would speak to this to a certain degree. I'd love to know really how they feel, like what they think he is relative to other number one receivers around the league, because I think that's playing into this as much as age is playing into this. We are talking, of course, to Ben Standig. One more on Terry, and then we'll move to, the first day of training camp practice. Let's just say that we get a week or 2 weeks into this, and it is a legitimate impasse, standstill, and they've given their best and final, and Terry's not accepting it. And we're heading towards Terry playing 2025 on the final year of his deal. And then, franchise tag extension next year will be the focus. When does he come in? When does he start, being a part of the team? He's under contract. We both know that there's no chance in hell he's going to hold out. It's a long shot that the team would trade him. They just wouldn't be able to, at this point, extract enough value back, I don't think. What would be, if this thing doesn't get done, does he come in right before the season begins? Does he come in before the first preseason game? The second preseason game? I mean, I've just thought about like the worst case situations, because I think that's it. He ends up playing the final year of his contract, but how does it get resolved?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's a great question. Again, I'd imagine he would be a holding at some point rather than just being completely away from the place. Somebody here told me that, and maybe this was on social media and I missed it, that apparently he's in town and that he was seen at a yoga studio yesterday, Terry. So take that for what it's worth. At least he's around. But
does he live here or not? Or does he live in Indianapolis?
No, he lives here, and that he lives here. That was one of his points. That like, hey, I'm making a life here. This isn't just where I work. This is where I'm gonna, live and raise a family and all that.
So the fact that he's here is insignificant. He'd be here anyway.
True. So he, yeah, that's a good point. But I don't know. I mean, like the preseason games don't mean much, right? I mean, I don't think he's going to be like, well, I have to at least play a preseason game or two just to make sure that I'm good to go. I doubt that's going to be the case. So that wouldn't be a deal. I mean, if he's going to play the season, you would think he's got to be looking at it at some point like, okay, I need to put my best self out there because I'm hopefully getting another contract with somebody else then next off season. So I don't know, man. I mean, does he show up, before the Ravens joint practice? Well, I can't even. My brain honestly can't even wrap around that level of situation here. I mean, we were joking earlier with somebody about, hey, does anybody want to talk about a McLaurin for Micah Parsons trade? And obviously joking. So, but if this thing goes longer, we're going to start coming up with.
Well, Dallas would never make that deal.
No, of course not. But I'm just saying, look,
there are some fans listening that would say, "Oh, I would never make that deal. I want Terry, not Micah Parsons." You'd have to give up so much more than Terry to get Micah Parsons back. And Dallas already has Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. So
yeah. No, like I said, we were just joking, but it's the fact that we got to that point of a joke. It's like, oh boy, are we really going to start going down this route? And I don't know. I can imagine fake trade alerts are coming if this, by the end of this week or maybe sooner, he's not here.
Yeah, I haven't even thought about which teams really desperately need a wide receiver. There are a few for sure. All right, let's turn the conversation towards other matters. First day of practice today. Before we get to that, I didn't ask you about this yesterday, and I have not talked to you about this off the air. Did we learn yesterday that Ben Sinnott had off-season shoulder surgery for the first time?
We did not.
Oh, you knew that?
No. Oh, for the first time. Meaning, no, yes, we didn't. We didn't know that. He was held out. Not held out, but when he was doing the OTAs and mini camps, he was wearing. Even though there's no contact, really, he was wearing a non-contact jersey. He was out there participating, but he was not doing. He wasn't doing everything per se. So no, we knew something was up, but not definitively that.
Okay.
So,
yeah, because Quinn said it yesterday, and I looked it up because I did not remember any sort of report on that, and it wasn't anywhere. He injured his shoulder in the Tampa Bay playoff game, but there was no report anywhere that I could find that he had off-season shoulder surgery. I pointed out that Quinn kind of went to him a couple of times in two different answers, and sometimes that can be a bit telling. I'm not sure if it is or isn't. Well, only time will tell, but maybe the expectations for him are high this year.
For Senate?
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's in an interesting position because I think from obviously it was a relatively quiet year for somebody that was a second-round pick, but that was in part because the two guys that were playing ahead of him played every single game, and Zach Ertz obviously had a really productive year. Look, Sinnott would be the guy of the future. I mean, certainly over Zach Ertz. I don't know how much he's playing again this year if Zach Ertz doesn't get hurt, but there does become a point of like, hey, if Zach Ertz can do these things, couldn't a younger guy do them maybe a little bit better or with a little more explosiveness? Because Zach Ertz is pretty much a catch and hit the ground kind of a guy. But I think one of the things with Sinnott is he's this weird sort of hybrid player, an H-back, fullback, a tight end. What is he as a route runner? I think that's something they were hoping he would improve upon this offseason. I thought he looked pretty decent during OTAs and mini camps. Again, you got to set the scene for it's not the most competitive of situations, but I thought he looked better there. I just think he's there may be expectations for him, but unless again he shows so much that they're willing to start sitting Zach Ertz, who became a reliable target for Jaden Daniels, then I don't know how he's getting on the field a ton. That would be my only concern. But yeah, I don't think they've lowered their expectations on him. It's just a matter of how do you find a way for him to get on the field.
How's Noah Brown doing?
Yeah, so Quinn was asked about that today, and because it's this time of year, they don't have to give us any specifics on injuries. Quinn was pretty vague on that, but said, when Brown got hurt in the mini camp, and there was some concern from that, he's now saying that he'll practice, but it's going to be a little bit of a ramp up. He's probably not going to practice every day to start. He's still kind of working himself back. I mean, I think it's a knee, but obviously it wasn't an ACL or anything on those lines because that's a whole other deal. So it doesn't sound like it's worrisome in terms of the season, but this is a player who unfortunately gets hurt like every year. And this is why he showed some good promise last year here, and then he gets the sort of the freak kidney injury and misses the rest of the season. There were times when he was with Houston where you're like, oh boy, fantasy football players remember a couple years ago, Noah Brown was, and then, things went sideways. And that's, if it was a different player, you might be like, all right, well, it doesn't sound like it's a huge deal. But with this player, I don't think you can ignore the possibility that it leads to, a lingering issue. I'm speculating, throughout the season. I think it's possible, again, just based on his history. But, hopefully he's fine. And, if they need to ease him in, so be it. But, so I think we're just going to have to wait and see a little bit and how quickly he's able to get out there and play with any consistency.
And Quinn also, we're talking to Ben Standig, of course. Quinn also addressed Sam Cosmi and the possibility he's ready to go week 1. What did he say?
Yeah, he said that Cosmi's, recovery is going great. And that the possibility. I don't. Okay, it's sort of Quinn talking out of both sides of his mouth here. He said multiple times, "We're not going to skip a step." He said this with other players off injuries. We're not going to skip a step. We're not going to rush anything. Well, if he's back week 1, he's making a remarkable comeback because his surgery for the ACL was like mid to late January. Typically the early return for that type of injury is 9 months. 9 months is like October, not week 1. So that seems to me to be a bit aggressive. That said, Cosmi was out here on the side field with the training staff, and he was running around, and running around in the field without getting hit is different. But he looked, he looks comfortable. He looked like he was doing fine with that. So it's good to see that he's moving forward. But I don't know. I'm not. We'll see I'd be surprised if he's week 1 available.
All right. Your phone was starting to break up there, but let's try to get one more in. Just tell me what you saw today. I just read your tweet about a Jaden Daniels throw. You had a lot of capital letters in that tweet. Observations day one.
Well, like I said, it was more or less a fancy OTA, so not a ton to get into. Even things like I can't even tell you like lineups. I don't think any of that really matters much on day one. But that said, yeah, they do their position drills and then they go out to 11 on 11s. Deebo Samuel runs a fade from the slot, crosses over with another receiver, gets himself in a one-on-one matchup with Tyler Owens. That's obviously a favorable one, you'd think, right? And Samuel has a baby step on him, but there's nothing there. There's no space for Jaden to just loft the pass there. His pinpoint it's beyond pinpoint. This is like guidance system level targeting, and the ball somehow doesn't. Deebo puts his arms up for like an over the shoulder of the catch, and it's as if the ball was already there because it was that perfect of a throw. And you're just like, you got to be kidding me. It was literally the first pass he threw in an 11-11. So, we've all seen it to the degree that we saw last year. I don't know if any of us were like, well, that's stunning. But on the other hand, you're like, you got to be kidding me. The first pass, and it's to a guy who has no chemistry, didn't play with last year. This isn't a chemistry thing either. So it was pretty impressive. He looks as
and the line did a good job against TJ Watt.
Say that again.
In the line held up against TJ Watt on the play.
Exactly.
Okay, what else? What else? Any other major observations?
Not really. I mean, it was just wild to see Von Miller out here. To have Von Miller and Bobby Wagner. I asked Jeremy Reeves, "This is bad." He's just like, dude, I've been in the league for a while, but when you have two guys like that, not just one but two, to be able to see what they do, pick their brain, it's just a remarkable opportunity. And as I think we talked about yesterday, how the defensive line rotation or the front seven rotation goes will be really fascinating. And it's way too early to assess. But having a Von Miller out there, one of the premier pass rushers of all time, is it's going to be really interesting to see how that works and how they play together. Like I said, I don't want to oversell anything that happened today, which really wasn't that much, but that's okay. I mean, it's not expected to be that much. We'll get to the end. I think we get through this week, and then I think things start to ratchet up, and that's when we'll start to be able to see, okay, what lineups are happening, who's lined up where, how is player X, Y, or Z doing. I think that's when it gets more interesting. Right now, it's just getting a feel for each other, getting a feel that to get back on the field. Make sure you're in playing shape. And then obviously we're on Terry watch. That's remains the biggest thing.
Yeah, Terry watch is the number one thing. By the way, real quick trivia question for you. Let's see how much you're studying the roster as you prepare for your multiple iterations of your final 53. Who's the oldest player on the team right now?
I mean, is it Von Miller? I'm trying to think if there's somebody. Is it Tress?
Nope.
Okay, who is it?
Josh Johnson's 39 years old.
Oh, sorry. You know what? That's on me. I was not thinking about him.
We had a long conversation about Josh Johnson like a week and a half ago. I think he was signed because I think he's eventually going to be on this coaching staff.
Yeah.
What'd you say,
Kevin? My memory is wait, my wasted youth has ruined my memory. I'll just leave it at that. So I can't remember anything. But I was watching Josh Johnson today throw the ball. I mean, did I see? I don't know if this is correct, but I guess it can't be because we don't know for sure the 53. But if you tell me that they're the oldest team in the league by the time we get to
they're the oldest team in the league right now on their 90, and I think their projected 53 will be the oldest team in the league. But you know where they're not old? At quarterback.
Yes.
That's good news.
Starting
quarterback.
Yes. Starting quarterback. Yeah, no. Again, it's such a weird deal. They are a contender whose roster is still in need of work. And that's why they're having to bring in some of these older vets because, as we know, multiple draft classes didn't produce much. And they're having to fill in the gaps. And now, to try to get to the next level, you got to bring in some guys who can play.
All right. Thanks. Appreciate it. Again, Ben is now writing on Substack. So go to Ben's X account to get linked to his Substack reporting and columns, which he will be writing per usual, I'm sure, very prolifically. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks. I'll just say quickly, there's a sale on the subscription through the rest of the week. So if you want to get in, this is obviously the best time to do it.
Perfect. At Ben Standig, everybody. Last Man Standig podcast. I'll talk to you later. Thanks. Ben Standig, everybody. When we come back, our guy Denton Day. I love Denton. Denton, longtime producer of this show. Miss him terribly. He's doing great, but he's out at training camp doing some work, and he texted me. He said, I got a couple interviews for you if you want to run them. 90 to 120 seconds, a minute and a half to 2 minutes with Quan Martin and Jalen Lane after training camp day number 1. So we will play both of those for you when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. So Denton Day, the former producer of this show, has been out at camp today. And he may be out there on other days. He'll be sitting in on this show for me a few times in the next coming few weeks. But he recorded quick interviews with Quan Martin and Jalen Lane, their fourth-round pick from Virginia Tech. Here's the conversation between Denton and Quan Martin after practice today.
All right, standing here with Quan Miller. Quan, how do you feel to be out there, man? First day of training camp, getting out there, how do you feel?
I felt good, man. Just glad to be back, be out there with the guys, man.
How's your body feeling?
I feel great, man. I did the best I could get in football shape this offseason, so I'm feeling good.
You got a bunch of guys out here. Everyone seems to be healthy. What's it like kind of learning some of the new guys and working with some of the guys that you played with last year?
Just continuing to build that chemistry, man, and just working with the new guys, just getting a feel for their game, communication, play style. I think everything is, being able to show out here when we working together as a team.
Second year under defensive coordinator Joe Witt. What are you hoping to work on this year to get you guys ready to go for week one?
There's a lot to work on, man. It's day one. Like you said, second year under Coach Witt, man, to just get more familiar with the defense, just finding ways to make plays and just find little holes in the defense.
We've seen a little bit of Trey Amos, obviously, as a rookie. What have you seen from him so far?
Man, he's been great, man. Just his football knowledge, his instinct, just the way he played the game and understood the game.
Juan, appreciate it, man.
Quan Martin with Denton after practice today. Quan Martin, Will Harris, starting safeties. No more Jeremy Chin coming up for this year, and I thought Chin had a really good season. There are others in the mix. I think they like Percy Butler. I think there is some love for number 40, Tyler Owens. But Quan Martin and Will Harris, pencil them in, right now, barring injury, as your starting safeties. And I think corner will be, where the focus will go. What does Lattimore look like? I do think that's one of the big storylines of camp, and we'll get into some of that, tomorrow and on Friday. I think what Lattimore looks like and, how he adapts to year two and having more comfort with the system than coming in midway through the season last year. God, his health, his availability, his play is going to be huge. And then, is it Jonathan Jones on the other side, or is it Mikey Sanderstill on the other side, or does Sanderstill move inside? Trey Amos, look, I've said this several times during the offseason. It's rare. The Pat Surtans and the Sauce Gardners of the world are the exceptions to the rule. Corners typically take time. They typically do not make their significant, contributions to the teams that draft them in year one. Maybe Trey Amos will be different. He was projected by many to go in the first round and ended up going late second round. And everything that's been said about him so far has been positive, but let's be fair. He is not lined up against CeeDee Lamb or A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith or Malik Neighbors in an actual game yet. So going to be really hard to, evaluate Trey Amos until real games begin. That's one of those positions, man, you don't know until real games begin. Not to mention, it's a hard position from a scheme standpoint. It takes time. I think the best case for them in the secondary is Will Harris is every bit of what Jeremy Chin was. Quan Martin plays the way he did towards the end of last year. And you end up with a healthy and very highly productive Marshawn Lattimore, and maybe even a Jonathan Jones on the outside with Sanderstill being able to play inside. Sanderstill is going to be versatile. They'll be able to use him in a lot of ways. Obviously, he proved he could play on the outside. This was Denton after practice today with fourth-round draft pick, wide receiver / punt returner, Jalen Lane.
Standing here with Jalen Lane. First day of practice out here, man. Training camp in the NFL. How'd it feel?
Man, it felt amazing. I'm just extremely blessed to be a part of this organization, blessed to be out here.
it was a good first day. A lot of guys competing. That's what you like to see.
What did it feel like getting out there and catching balls from Jaden Daniels now that we are officially in training camp?
Yeah, man, it feels good, man. It feels just like OTAs. It's just, we're playing football. It's the biggest thing, but, just having fun, competing. It's all good.
What's been the process of learning this NFL offense for you the past few months?
Yeah, man, I just kind of attack it head on. The coaches, they do a great job of, extra meetings, extra walkthroughs, making sure, especially me being a rookie coming in, just picking up the offense, trying to master it, and, getting it down pat. So it's been really cool.
What's it been like to be in a room with a guy like Deebo Samuel, who's been really successful in this league for a long time?
Yeah, it's amazing. He's, a guy that's, coaching me up after every single play. That's just the type of guy he is. And, it's a blessing to have him in the room. Me, him, both of them in South Carolina is pretty cool, too. So kind of got them roots.
We know what you bring on special teams. How excited are you to get out there and start to show everyone out here what we know as fans you're capable of?
Yeah, man, that's the biggest thing. My mindset coming in, I'm just trying to, prove my worth to my teammates, most importantly to the coaches, and, just earn respect, earn trust. That's what I'm trying to do.
Jalen Lane, who the most excited coach when they drafted him in the coach's room or, among the coaches on the staff was special teams coach Larry Izzo. They had him as the number one punt returner in this draft. And even though, depth charts may not reflect it at this point, Jalen Lane, barring injury or barring, they were wrong, will likely be the week one punt returner against the Giants. I'm not saying that he won't be on the field offensively, because you can use Jalen Lane in many ways. By the way, not too similarly to Deebo Samuel. There's a lot of versatility there with jet sweeps in the backfield. Certainly, could he take Diami's place as a deep threat or as a bubble screen guy? Yeah. But there's a lot of receivers there, even without Terry there. Debo's going to be a part of the mix. Noah Brown's going to be a part of the mix. We hope Luke McCaffrey in year two takes a big jump. There are veterans like Gallup and KJ Osborne. But I think Jalen Lane, I'm going to be very surprised if we get to preseason games and he's not back there so that they can get some comfort level with him as a punt returner. And then, week one. I think that's what they had him penciled in as when they picked him, more so than anything on offense. And again, I'm not saying that he's not going to be a part of the offensive plan, but I think that he will be back there when hopefully the defense forces the Giants to punt a few times in week one. Thank you, Denton. That was good stuff. We'll try to do some of that every day with Denton, and we'll get a player or two or some coaches on between now and the first preseason game against the Patriots a week from Saturday night. 2 weeks from Saturday night. 2 weeks from Saturday night is their first preseason game. By the way, keep in mind, another thing just to wonder about is, did they find the answer at kicker? In Matt Gay and signing Matt Gay, because we know what the kicking situation was last year. And, as happy as I was to see Zane Gonzalez doink one in Tampa between Seibert and York and Gonzalez, and remember they had Greg Joseph in there for a game as well. Too many missed kicks, too many crucial missed PATs, especially from Seibert in that Dallas game in particular late in the season. Matt Gay's the new kicker, and they, given the number of close games they played last year, and then looking at the schedule, at least the way it looks right now, they're going to need that guy to be huge in 2025. All right, when we come back, Dan Quinn yesterday was asked about sort of the next iteration of Jaden Daniels. You'll hear what he said, and we'll talk about it. Also, Stephen A. Smith said something about combining Baltimore and Washington as it relates to a stadium. We'll react to that as well. That's next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. There's news on the stadium front, the RFK deal front. It comes from Mark Seagraves, Channel 4, who's reporting that Phil Mendelson, the D.C. Council chair, has reached an agreement with the team to adjust the financial terms of the stadium deal that was negotiated by the mayor's office and announced all the way back in April. Mark Seagraves reporting that Mendelson and the city council, who they've been talking to the team, and they've been trying to get the deal that was cut by the mayor tweaked to benefit DC even more. So they are adjusting some of the terms of the deal. And according to Mark Seagraves, this opens the door for the city council to vote on the stadium deal in a matter of days, likely after the upcoming public hearings next week. So that's good news. Now, in terms of what the adjustment to the financial terms are, there was not any information specifically in this story from Mark Seagraves other than to say the details of those changes are not yet clear. But it does look like, at least according to Mark Seagraves, we've had Mark on the show before, Channel 4, that the city council has tweaked the deal, reached an agreement with the team, and they'll be ready to vote on this sometime next week. That would be incredible for everybody. All right. Wanted to just play one of the sound bites that we didn't have a chance to talk about on yesterday's show from the Peters-Quinn press conference. Quinn also held a presser this morning, but he was asked about sort of the next iteration of Jaden Daniels and what does that look like. Here's what he said.
This question's for Dan. Obviously, you're a rookie quarterback, not a rookie anymore. Jaden Daniels had a pretty good year last year. So what's the next step, the evolution of Jaden Daniels? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think more growth. And one thing I've learned over the year from Jaden, and there's no limits on him, because this is somebody that absolutely is a savage from a work standpoint and just absolutely puts it in. So the skill work, the techniques, the knowledge of the offense, all of those things are going to be enhanced. And he's thrown himself an excellent offseason. We had a good conversation on the phone just the other night, chopping it up about the team, the summer, the offseason, and you can feel his energy. And just walking out here, when you walk into our building, there's a lot of energy with our team, and he's right in the middle of all that. But I would never mistake him for not doing anything other than absolutely emptying the tank to go for it.
So, a lot of emphasis on just the grinder that he is, the worker that he is. But he said something, and I want to add to it because we've talked about, where do you see, Jaden needing major improvement? Like for us, most of us, it's like there's not going to be anything he does in 2025 where we say, oh, my God, he's so much better at that than he was as a rookie. I mean, there wasn't anything that he wasn't exceptional at as a rookie. But, there are some, apparent footwork, some slight footwork, issues that they wanted him to improve on. And then the thing that, and I had this conversation with somebody probably a month ago, and I forget if I've actually brought it to air or not. But I think the thing that they are hoping takes a big jump, and not that they said it was a weakness last year, but you heard in that answer that he said, the skill work, the techniques, the knowledge of the offense, all of those things are going to be enhanced. The knowledge of the offense can actually increase. The playbook, not that it was ever limited by any stretch of the imagination, but there can be even more put into this offense for a second-year quarterback. And the thing that got mentioned to me maybe a month and a half ago was there was growth throughout the year with him adjusting to defenses, adjusting not week to week, but play to play. the calls that defenses would make, the checks that defenses would make may have been a little bit more problematic early in the year, but he adjusted and grew significantly in being able to counter what the defense was doing, recognizing what defenses were doing pre-snap, even more so. So, talking about the knowledge of the season, that's going to be enhanced. And I think, and I'm not talking about reading defenses. I'm talking about knowing what defenses go to post-snap. And that he grew significantly on that, and they think he'll be off the charts this year when it comes to some of that. Last thing that I wanted to play before we get out of here. This was Stephen A. Smith talking about an idea that he's had for a while in having Baltimore, the Ravens, Washington, the Commanders, share a stadium.
I've been an advocate, a strong advocate. I've always wanted a stadium in the state of Maryland that the Ravens and the Washington Commanders could share with a lot of employment emanating from DC, but still be able to, because again, you wouldn't have to worry about stuff like this. That's just my personal opinion. That was the idea that I threw out last year, that the Ravens and the Commanders should actually share stadium. You got a minimum of 17 to 18 weeks where you got games there, plus playoff games and all of that stuff, plus events in the offseason. And you know what? And it's the state of Maryland that you have to deal with instead of this kind of nonsense. But they didn't do.
So I recognize Stephen A. Smith as a very polarizing figure. I've talked a lot about him, in previous years, not a lot recently. I mean, I don't watch Stephen A., but I respect Stephen A. I'm not sure there's anybody that works harder in sports, TV, sports journalism, sports radio, sports podcasting. This dude does everything, and he's always done it. He's always been a grinder. And by the way, incredibly generous as well. But this is an idiotic idea. Literally, there's not one fan of either team that would want this. Maybe there are residents of each of the two cities that might be in favor of this, but no fan would be in favor of this. Not to mention, Baltimore's got a great stadium. What are we going to share M&T Bank and hoof it to Baltimore? Like, where would you put it? Like, this is, this was not one of his better, more, intelligently well thought out takes. This would never happen, ever. And it looks like we're now getting very close to the finish line on RFK. Final poll numbers on Team Terry, not final, but updated poll numbers on Team Terry or Team Front Office. About 1,500 votes in, very close. Those that would side with Terry, 51.9%. Those that would side with the team, 48.1%. Back tomorrow. Chris is up next.